In this episode of the Success Great podcast, I have with me Gary Prenevost. Gary has 30 years of experience in the Canadian franchising industry, making him an industry leading and much sought after consultant for people who are considering franchise ownership. Having been on every side of the franchise business table, he has brought single, multi-unit, and master franchises, brought US franchise concepts to Canada, helped companies become franchisors, and coached hundreds of entrepreneurs. He and his team at FranNet have helped over 2,000 prospective franchisee clients to fully explore their self-employment option. So today in this episode, I'm talking with Gary about franchising. Gary, welcome to this episode of the Success Career Podcast.
Thank you very much, Hussein. It's a pleasure to be here.
First of all, I want to know throughout your career and business and working with other clients and your team, what do or how do you define success and what do you see other people would say success or have certain misconceptions around success?
Well, I learned like success is something that is unique to each of us. And I learned many years ago through one of the personal development courses that I went through that it's the progressive realization of predetermined goals. And there's financial, there's lifestyle, there's other areas. So for me, I have this unique habit where I have a dreams list and I fill up my dreams list with anything that I say I wish or I want goes on that list. I've been doing that for years. Every year I pick two or three things from that dreams list was saying, and I turn it into a goal, and then I pursue those goals. And one of the recent goals was writing a book, and that came out last year for me. So it's, to me, success is being able to live the life that you chose with purpose and intention and have fun along the way.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now franchising. This is, I guess, a big topic, but it's also a good one because generally speaking, when starting a business, there are a lot of things that are in the owners or in the entrepreneur's mind. There are multiple things that they even don't consider. But if we are talking about franchising, yes, there are, I guess, monetary investment involved, but usually there are also a lot of things that they get help from the for, right? So, in your opinion, do you think your journey through franchising industry over the past years is a good idea for anyone who wanting to start a business?
Well, it's the franchise. There's pros and cons to franchising, as there's pros and cons to other options. You've got three main options: start a business from scratch, buy an existing business, or buy a franchise. Um, the advantage of a good franchise. Let's define good franchising as franchisors that are taking the responsible approach. They're attracting and recruiting the right franchisees, not somebody who just has a big wallet or check or purse and can afford it. They have the skills to execute the business model, and that the franchisor cares about unit economics and cares about the well-being of the franchisees. So there's a good fit. That to me is, when I talk about franchising, that's my baseline.
Mhm.
The franchising has advantages over the other options. One of the biggest advantages is that the new owner doesn't have to figure a lot of things out from scratch. If they're starting from scratch, they have to figure out all the different things, what the customers are, what type of things they have to create, systems, processes. It doesn't cost as much, but the trial and error cost over time, Hussein, can be daunting and it can kill businesses because it takes so long to build. A franchise, you can't do as many things. You've got to follow the systems and processes, but in that, they're keeping you focused on what they know works. So I describe it as a time compression strategy for the first 2 years of the business while you're learning the business. You're focusing on the good habits to build, the good activities. You're not being distracted by things that might work, but the franchisor knows does not work or not yet. So it really keeps the new franchisee, the new business owner, focused on the critical activities that drive short-term success. So they get through the launch phase and then they're starting to grow it. Now, because they've learned the business and they've got the support of the franchisor, it's not just having the systems, it's having the franchisor train and coach the individual. Once they're trained and coached, they're at a competency or proficiency, they know how to run the business. Now the next and the biggest advantage of franchising comes in is it's a growth acceleration strategy. Because now they can grow, they've got the skills, they've got the systems and processes, they can really scale it much bigger, much faster than they could on their own, because they've got the resources around them, they've got the knowledge of all the other franchisees, of the franchisor, a lot of advantages over the other business options. And yes, it takes money to start. You're giving up royalties. A lot of people misunderstand royalties as why are you giving so much off the profit right off the top? You know, if it's an 8% royalty or a 10% royalty, well, I can do that myself and I'll save all that money. I think where people go wrong is they don't understand the value of the royalty dollar. And this is something that what am I getting? If I'm going to part with that, what am I getting in return? I'll give you a good example. We have a couple of franchisors in the residential cleaning franchise. One has a call center and the other one does not. So the one that does not, they basically the same investment level, the same royalty. The one that does not have the call center, Mr. or Ms. Franchisee, you have to hire this telemarketer. You have to hire this administrative person. And if you want to cover the hours, that's probably 1.5 positions per day. That's the equivalent of about a $40,000 to $50,000 at the low end. So if the call center, on the other hand, the other franchisor has the call center, and the franchisor is taking the calls and fielding them and qualifying them and booking the appointment for the franchisee or their salesperson, that's well worth that money. That's just one example of understanding the value of royalty.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, like you mentioned, it's there are certain investment, there are the royalties, but also you will get systems, SOPs, which are you are not going to get with the new business, that you are going to be discovering new things facing new challenges, these things that they have already faced, the equipment they are using, for example, if they have certain equipments, these things will make things easier for the owner to start their business. So there are, I think, like if you can expand or explain on the single or multi-unit and master franchising franchises. So is there a difference between these three types, and which is the best to start with?
Well, so all of them deal with one of the criteria. I take my clients through 12 to 14 criteria before we start looking at specific businesses. What you're talking about is scalability. If I look at a single unit, a lot of people start with a single unit, and that might be the right play. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Depends on the circumstances. A single unit, the owner is full-time in the business. They're running the business. You've got single unit active owner and single unit semi-absentee owner. So I'll do the first one and then I'll come back to the semi-absentee. For the life of the business, the owner is required to be involved in the business. This is an owner-operator business, saying where they might build a small team, but they are the driver. They are the primary face of the business. So they hit a certain level of capacity, and the business can't do much more because they're maxed out, or their team is maxed out, or the market is maxed out. But they're good businesses because they're achieving that lifestyle. Some people come to me and say, Gary, I want to get to a certain level of income, a certain level of hours. I want to protect that lifestyle. I've earned some good money in my career. This is about quality of life. So that's all I want to do. Another person might buy the exact same business and say, once I achieve a goal, I set the next goal, I achieve that goal, I set the next goal. So they're going to look at that one unit and go, I might start there, but I want to be an executive owner. I want to go, once I've got the business up and running, I want to buy a second unit. Now they're moving into multiple units, and then I want to buy more units. So as I add more locations, I get more income per location, and I build a leadership team, but I'm also building my skills as the owner. So they go with the eye of scaling. So multiple units usually goes up to 3 to 5 units. So that's the term multiple unit. Then we go to area development, which is a bigger multi-unit. You've got a single owner, but they might own 10 or 15 locations, so a much bigger control area. They will run all of those with their leadership team. So that's those are all owner operator to executive owner to the general manager, the CEO managing a team of managers. That's that scale progression.
That's
If we start with, if go ahead.
no, please continue your idea.
Yeah, if we now we come back to the semi-absentee owner, a lot of people, especially over the last couple of years, we've been in a very strong job market. So people are saying it's really hard to leave a good job in my what I call good corporate earning horsepower to start a business. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I don't want to leave my job yet. But I do want to create a hedge against future uncertainty. So they might buy that same type of business where instead of them running it, they hire a general manager from the industry who's experienced. They manage the manager and they manage the dashboard of the business. But they also typically will look at, in order to get good return off of that type of business, they will want to buy 2 or 3 or 4 units because they have to pay for the manager from each unit. So it's not going to be as profitable as if they were running it themselves. So the difference being semi-absentee or manager-run businesses, they're about 15 to 20 hours a week of time managing the manager. The owner is always responsible for the business of saying if something happens, they've got to leave their job, not quit their job, but leave for that day and deal with that issue. So they better have a job that's flexible, and they better have the bandwidth to be having that 15 hours a week for the life of the business. Otherwise, they shouldn't do the semi-absentee model.
Yeah,
So that,
especially now,
yeah, that
especially when starting out with the in franchising, I would say like I would need I would need a lot of help beginning, especially like getting the SOPs, business running, a lot of things, these kind of things. But I do want to reach a point where I am operating the whole business from A to Z. The only thing that I would maybe need, maybe the equipment if they are supplied, and paying the royalties, I guess. So because eventually it is the idea for someone who is trying to get a franchise, I think that is that we want to cut short the time that we are successful in business. This is how I would describe myself if I want to get a franchise and start with that.
well, this is where it's hard to determine what the direct apples to apples comparison is, which is why I suggest people look at the cumulative wealth over 12 years, the wealth accumulation.
Mm,
The starting a business from scratch, we don't know how long it takes, and it's going to be all guesstimates. But let's say and by the way, 50% of start from scratch businesses fail after 5 years. In the US, it's even worse.
mm,
So we know start from scratch is much higher risk, where in the US, less than 10% of franchises fail. We don't have that measurement in Canada because there is no standard industrial code for the classification of franchising. But the industry estimates it at around 15 to 20%, depending on the category. So you much higher success rate. That comes because of the reason we talked about before. But when we talk about the return on the 12-year basis, and you can do this comparing it to a job as well. Year one in starting from a business, even in franchising, expect no income. A lot of people think I'm going to open the doors, the customers will come. No, you got to work and you got to engage the community. I call year one a sacrifice year. You'll work harder, put more time in, earn less money than you ever have, but you're building a strong foundation.
mm,
The year two, most of my clients are earning some money in year two. By the end of the year two, they're achieving what they set out to achieve or close to it financially and lifestyle wise. So now year one is the sacrifice year. Year two is the launch year or the build year. I call that the growth phase. Then you're entering the stride phase. The stride is now the business is on plane. It is doing what the owner wanted it to do, and they keep that business for as many years as they want. Some people it's 7 to 10 years. Now I'm earning good income. And I go back to that example I talked about before, where some people say, I just want to protect the lifestyle. They might say, I want to get to $100,000 a year and stay there. So they're going to run that exact same business very different than somebody else who says, I set the goal, then I set the next goal. they're going to, when they hit a plateau, they're going to say, okay, what's the next growth area? How do I add more customers? How do I add more staff? How do I grow my business? How do I add more locations? And they're going to take that business and do more things with it.
Yeah.
And this is one of the key things I learned in the research from my book, The Unstoppable Franchisee, is that the top performers, because I studied the top 1 to 4% of franchisees, what do they do that the rest of franchisees don't do that drives their success?
Mm.
What they do is when they hit a plateau or a comfort zone, they reflect for a little while. What have I learned? What do I like? What do I not like? What do I need to change? And then they take the business to the next level. And they add people, they add staff, they add customers, and they continually drive and scale their business.
Yeah. So throughout your year working with over 2,000 people that they want to have a franchise client, what have someone ever told you that was the, let's say, the worst advice that you ever received, and you mention it to others and you regret actually applying that advice?
Boy, what would probably the worst is the advice I didn't give myself. I got seduced by an opportunity. I was 5 years into my FranNet business. We saw a business. It was a master franchise where we bought the rights to the country, invested over $500,000, and I saw the numbers and the opportunity, and I went for it without looking at what was the work, enough of the work it took to drive the business. And I flew to other countries to visit. We thought we understood the model. 3 years later, Hussein, $1.3 million loss, we closed that business down. So the advice that people can take from that is don't get seduced by the opportunity. There's an alignment that has to happen. The head, heart, and gut is the alignment. Let me break that down. When somebody's buying a business or thinking about buying a business, they don't have to love the product. This is a mistake a lot of people make, and I think it's some of the worst advice what people get is you have to believe, you have to love the work and love the product, right? So what you have to do is you have to believe in the value of the product or service. You have to love the work it takes to put that product or service in the customer's hands. People say, I love cooking, therefore I'm going to open up a restaurant. Well, what the heck does cooking have to do with running a restaurant? You're hiring cooks, you're managing inventory, you're managing facility, you're managing transient labor, you're dealing with customers and fickle customers. So there's a lot. The life of a restaurateur is managing an adversity. If you've never managed an adversity before and you don't thrive on that, it's not going to be a very happy place. So number one, you have to love the work it takes to put the solution into the customer's hands. That's operations, people, customers, IT, the finances. Nobody's good at everything. So what are they good at and what are they not good at? The next piece, so loving the work is where the heart needs to be. That's then the brain, the head is, what is the math? Does the operational math work? Can I earn the income by doing the work? Do I have the skills to do the work? Having the skills is different than loving to doing it. Those are two different things. Because if I don't have the skills, I have to spend money to get them, or I have to hire people, which costs money to get those skills. So once I figure those two out, then that's a time to say, does it feel right? Is this the right culture? Is this the right family? And it takes usually probably 14 to 16 weeks to figure it all out. For most of my clients, it's I get some people get, Gary, it has to feel right before I start investigating it. No, leave feeling to the end. Get the head and the heart, and then at the end, does it feel right? After you've met the people, you have to have alignment on what the product is. So if there's that possible alignment, you keep on digging. If there's not alignment, don't engage.
That's a very interesting point you mentioned there, that what you mentioned in the beginning, that we don't have to be passionate or love the product, we have to love what basically does or the value of it. Because a lot of us in general thinking about also applies that I should love or be passionate about what I do in business, but also hear a different idea or a different perspective. What could the value be for others, not just how I see it, whether I love it or not. Also, cooking, being a good cook does not mean you will run a good restaurant. There are different aspects into restaurant. So, what eventually I would say that uh, we should look into new opportunities and see different aspects of businesses because we don't know, let's say maybe if we get help, it would be easier for us to be a success like franchising in general. And also you mentioned working with the community because even if someone gets a franchise that is well known and people see the logo of the business, but we eventually have to work for it to make it a success. It does not mean having a well-known name that it will automatically be a success. That's very important. So what do you think some of the, like you mentioned your book, The Unstoppable Franchisee, what do you think some of the resources, tools, or also books you can mention again that could help people who are looking to franchise businesses?
To buy a franchise, I think one of the best books out there is Street Smart Franchising by Joe Matthews. It walks through all the things that people need to learn about themselves, the and helps them understand the franchise industry. There's over 4,000 franchises in the US, about 3,400 active. In Canada, there's about just over 1,000 franchises. So there's a lot of options. People think franchising is food and retail, Hussein. That's about 40% of the industry. The vast majority of our work is in businesses that people don't even think about. 90% of our clients tell us after they bought, I would have never picked it from a list and I would have never seen myself in the business. But once I started learning about that business, holy moly, can I ever drive it? And it's got less competitive pressures, it's got less volatility. I love need-based businesses versus want-based businesses. I need a haircut. I want a good meal at a restaurant. When times get tough and economics get a little wonky, people are going to cut their spending, but they're not going to cut their spending on need-based stuff. They're going to cut it on want-based stuff.
Mm.
And there's a lot of businesses that fly under the radar that are want-based, as well as that are need-based.
Okay, definitely. So eventually, it's also like sometimes the business, which is very important point. If the business is there, I guess for the people surrounding the business, the community, there would be a huge difference in times of, like I would say, maybe crisis or not good times for the business in general. Also, I would say maybe that will add something to the business owner if they are involved in the community would make a difference to the business in general. So Gary,
I'd like to address that because I think this is one of the biggest mistakes franchisees make. They think that I've got a big brand, I'll open the doors and the customers will come. If all it took to achieve strong success in franchise ownership was to follow the system, all franchisees would be successful, Hussein. But what top performers do more with that system, they engage the community. They become the mayors, the informal mayors. They are visible. They are broadcasting their passion for the business by serving the community that serves them. Franchisees that are just average performers, they sit on the sidelines and do very little community engagement. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes franchisees make is not actively engaging the community.
Mhm. Because yeah, because when we are talking about business in general, whether it's online or offline, it is about, I would say, having or building this type of relationship with people because they would know you, and being personal is, I guess, important, especially nowadays. It is with all the distractions and all the options. I would say it's it is very important.
Well, and if we look at community, there's several layers. People think of community and the geographic community where they live. Well, there's ethnic communities, there are faith communities, there are geographic communities, there are business communities. I think business communities are one of the strongest. If I can interact with people in my geographic community who serve the same customers as I do, and I can create a program for them, and they can create a program for my customers. Now we've got extra opportunity. Each aspect of community is a different layer of a different area to farm. So you think about increasing the size of the opportunity platform, you do that by engaging more advocates and by being more visible.
Definitely. So, Gary, where can people learn more about you and what you do if they want to help getting more information about franchising and expanding their horizon on that type of business?
The best place to reach me, my website, theunstoppablefranchisee.com. It has my keynote speaking there. It has my book there. It also has my FranNet franchise matchmaking services. I am a franchisee myself with FranNet, so www.frannet.com. That's FRANNET.com. And just do the Gary Prenevost in the consultant search, and they'll find me that way. But you can just Google search me. My favorite place to connect is LinkedIn. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn, say what you're interested in, and we'll start a dialogue.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Gary, for being with me in this episode of the podcast. You really provide great information in regards to franchising and how ultimately any business that you are in, whether there are certain things that are set up for you or not, it is also important to always remember the place you are in and how you help people and the community around you. That's how you build a successful business, I would say. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to be here.